Hey guys, CDTV and his comically large microphone windshield back again. So, now that I've covered my 10 favourite and least favourite hit rap songs of 2020, it's time to close out the end of your lists by talking about the albums of that year. And today we're starting with the stuff that I like, the 10 best rap albums of 2020. And making these end of year lists really made me realise why I started doing top 10s less on my channel, because my god, these take so much time and energy to make. A top 10 list is a basic format, but if you put a lot of effort into it, that shit is time consuming. Now, as I am going to be covering 10 albums in this video, I'm not necessarily going to be breaking them down with an in-depth review one by one, but rather touching on what I enjoyed and appreciated about them. And I 100% recommend checking every single one of these out if you haven't heard them yet already, and what I have to say about them has you curious. These are essentially my 2020 album recommendations to you. So, let's get into it. This is CDTVProductions, and let's take a look at my 10 best rap albums of 2020.
It's hard to get a job, so we hustle and flip a pack. It's all a setup. No wonder why they call this bitch a trap. Life was messed up, a matter of time till that nigga snap.
If there is one word that could be used to describe Polo G, it is consistent. And that is absolutely a word that also applies to his second studio album, The GOAT. Throughout the 16 songs here, the quality never really dips, with Polo melodically drifting over melancholic beats, rapping about violence, heartbreak, loss, and just the burden of pain in general, to be honest. He's an artist who isn't afraid to be open about his emotions and his past, I know being one of the biggest examples of this on here.
Music to block it out. He was molested as a baby boy. Messed up his head and even changed the way he played with toys.
The openness is one of the things I appreciate the most about his music, and how he makes it sound hauntingly beautiful yet sad at the same time. It's something that's found in abundance on The GOAT. Now, I do agree with people who say that Polo should really start switching his beat selection soon, because another album of songs over this style of production would get very repetitive, with most of his instrumentals consisting of sad sounding strings or sad sounding pianos, but for this album, it still works really well for him. It's something that for me hasn't necessarily got old yet, but if he doesn't switch it up on the next album, it will. If you like the first few tracks on this album, chances are you'll enjoy the rest of it just as much, and that was the case for me, making The GOAT a project I enjoyed a lot. Also, I pray he throws more straight up bangers like Go Stupid on the next album, because Polo can wrap circles around a hard hitting instrumental when he wants to.
She liked it, she thought she was like, Stacey got the brib and a brand new bag. Going up good, so she can't look.
If you want a collection of back-to-back bangers that all sound like they should be hit songs, look no further than While the World Was Burning by St. John. I'm sure a lot of you who recognise the name St. John recognise it from his song Roses, which was remixed into being a massive hit. And by massive, I mean like 1 billion streams massive. But this album shows that him having a hit song wasn't a fluke, because he knows how to use his voice to make incredibly catchy hooks and verses that stick with you instantly the first time after you hear his song. On Sucks to Be You, we get our biggest look into John's backstory of poverty and being kicked out by his mother when he was trying to make something of himself, expressed with raw emotion in his voice. Gorgeous is one of the hardest tracks, with more of a focus on emphatic rapping than the melodic style mostly found on this project, while Monica Lewinsky and High School Reunion have a much lighter sound to them. There's a nice bit of variation, but the one thing they all have in common is that they're all incredibly catchy, and they all slap. And just look at the stacked feature list he got for this album. Lil Uzi, JID, Future, 2 verses from Kanye. The slick JID and aggressive Kanye features stuck out to me in particular, on Quarantine Wifey and Smack DVD respectively.
Rig give a nigga leg room, they be playing dumb. I thought somebody said something, but it's probably all inside my head. All these women tryna lie in my bed.
Had to build a plan A, okay, yeah, this is me. What they gonna say to me? I'm the only one out here that really getting free.
The features are great, but St. John is still very much the star of this project. The amount of promise he displays is ridiculous, and this album showcased a lot of what he has to offer. If this man doesn't have more hits in 2021, then the world is sleeping.
You don't know what you started. I pop a burger retarded. I got the driven kid straight from the force. But it's the D.O.D.O. They know where it started.
Yeah.
The world was robbed of such a great talent in 2020 when Pop Smoke's life was taken away at the age of 20 years old. This man was so young, had pretty much been rapping for just over one single year, and still somehow had such a defined and distinguishable sound and presence that made him stand out. And that New York drill sound he was known for was absolutely something he provided on Shoot for the Stars, with bangers like Aim for the Moon, Make It Rain, and Creature, all of which go hard as hell.
Look, I make it rain on whoever. I make it rain at whoever. Bitch, I'm a dog, a blue devil. I got the hoes like Hugh Hefner.
But it was also something he expanded outside of, with his versatility being displayed more than ever. You have a couple smooth love songs that are more heartfelt than you would expect with Something Special and What You Know About Love. Gangsters sounds very 50 Cent in nature with its instrumental, but is easily one of the best on the project. Pop Smoke just fits over that beat so well. Tracks like The Woo and Enjoy Yourself have these smooth R&B elements to them.
I take you on a shopping spree, 'cause I'm so into you. I'm so into you. Reaching and branching it, 'cause I don't know who watching. Ginger ale and any day, east up on the creme brulee. You don't gotta put your cup down. Hold on, drink freely. And holla at me if you need me.
And for the most part, this expansion of his sound and range sounded great. There are barely any tracks that missed on here for me. This album showed that Pop Smoke could be a great artist outside of the Brooklyn drill subgenre, and it is such a shame that he isn't around anymore to follow through on the enormous potential that albums like this show. But he closed out his career with one of the stronger posthumous albums I've heard, as Shoot for the Stars sounds complete to me, and like a good indicator of the promising direction that Pop Smoke would be heading in with his music.
Too evil is nobody out here could save me now. I remember when I was younger, my girl ain't answer my phone to listen to ticket.
I don't care what anyone else has to say about it, Eternal Take was a great album to me. It might be far from the deepest album on this list, but I do appreciate the little conceptual things Uzi put into it, such as the 3 alter egos he raps as across the album, Baby Pluto, Renji, and Lil Uzi, with each one having a little bit of a different sound. My personal favourite was the Renji persona in the middle section of the album with that insanely good gospel trap sound. That shit makes me ascend.
I just went up in my price. I drove my whip like it's stolen. Yellow diamond look like Homer.
Why would people want Uzi to go back to his 2016 sound when he could expand on this and actually move his music forward? That section of the album is phenomenal. And while the skits at the end of certain songs throughout the album aren't really that important, I think they do help to pull you into the vibe of the album nicely. The whole atmosphere of it is just really great. Things like that aren't necessarily huge, but for me they do add to it and make it just a little bit more special than your average run-of-the-mill trap album. With tracks like Baby Pluto, Low Main, Celebration Station, Bigger Than Life, and Bust Me, Lil Uzi dropped some of the best tracks of his career in my opinion. And for me personally, that made Eternal Take well worth the wait.
They gon' spin to the car hot. Don't call my phone to some more die. New made back, I don't need no key. I was in the dirt, you believe in me.
On Savage Mode 2, the first song, Runnin', ends with Morgan Freeman asking, are things better or worse the second time around? And in the case of this album, the answer is 1 billion times better. Oh my god, this is such an improvement over the first Savage Mode that it is ridiculous. 21 Savage's rapping shows a steep improvement. Metro Boomin made it boom with his production being more layered and hard hitting. It has Morgan Freeman narrating the fucking thing. What more could you ask for? Bringing it back to Metro's beats, there's so many tracks here where specific elements of the production stand out and just get stuck in your head. The violins on Rich, I can't say that word, shit, the strings on Glock in My Lap, the way Metro's producer tag hits right when the drums come in on Many Men, the 90s West Coast style sounds on Stepping On, I still can't say that word. Metro was in his element.
Once you figure that out, you'll be better, I feel like.
All black tux, I'm a businessman. Pussy, me and I still shaking killer's hand. Whoa, take the plug off in the middle, man. Stepping on niggas, stepping. Got a Glock on my hip, niggas hippity hop.
And 21's murder raps just fit so effortlessly over this production with his straight-faced delivery, making Savage Mode 2 the best album of his career so far. Him and Metro just know how to work with each other in the best way possible. And this might be an unpopular opinion, but that is one of the hardest cover arts of 2020. Drake tried his best to ruin the album on Mr. Right Now by calling himself the Slow Stroke King, but luckily everything outside of that was good enough for me to not care as much. Easily the best trap album of 2020 in my opinion, and that is something I never thought I would say of 21 Savage back in 2016.
Body Porsche on Cavalli dishes on my Holland in the drop Porsche while in my loafers crocodile styling. I be having greater visions.
Now we're getting around to the rap albums that really defined 2020 for me. Because 2020 was the year that I got into the music of the Griselda Collective, and it was such a great experience. I first listened to Pray for Paris when it dropped in April and it didn't click with me initially. I wasn't in the mood for some old school inspired rap at the time, and it being my first experience with Westside Gunn, his voice just did not sound good to my ears. But then my Griselda phase truly kicked off in October 2020 when I was really in the mood to listen to some quality music that wasn't a trap album, because as you can tell by this list, I don't dislike trap albums, but when that's all you're listening to at a certain point, it does get kind of dull. So you have to listen to something else, and that's what I was in the mood for. So I re-listened to this album, and man, it is brilliant. Now his voice is just something that adds a lot of character to his raps for me. It works so well with the grimy, raw production that is a Griselda staple, with his words and rhymes scattered all over the beats in a wild fashion. So many of the verses from him here are just ridiculous. George Bondo, Eurostep, Sean vs. Flair, Party with Pop Smoke, they all go crazy.
Out the head roll, pray demon, you ain't breathing, you ain't reeking. Lips moving, you ain't breathing. You start coughing up blood for insane reasons. Go your leashes on all red, St. Bernard, St. Laurent's, water with the coke with the avion. They be on bullshit, I be on real time. Left out that fast shell, did the impossible, incomparable. 100 drumsticks and silences came optional. Ain't no eye for eye, you take an eye, you take your whole head. Shopping sprees and galleries, Lafayette, Camilla, so here's
West comes through with a lot of strong performances here, and everything else about Pray for Paris adds on top of that to make it so great. Perfect feature selection, immaculate beat selection, the artwork, the overall aesthetic. Westside Gunn just knows how to craft an album the right way, which is even more impressive because he made this album without much pre-planning or forethought at all. He said he just felt inspired, so he got to work making it the second he felt that inspiration. He also dropped Who Made the Sunshine in 2020, which I also considered for this list because I love that project too, but Pray for Paris just has it slightly beat with its cohesiveness and constant quality. It's truly one of the albums that reignited my love for hip-hop music in 2020, but Gunn isn't the only Griselda member making this year's list.
This year 3 in the beginning of a 10-year run, and as predicted, my persistence got my name on all the lists, had a brick before
Adding another Griselda project to my albums of the year list, we have Burden of Proof by Benny the Butcher. After the first Benny project I heard, The Plugs I Met, I expected this one to go in a similar direction as the gritty, dark sound that was found on there. But on almost every track here, Hit Boy provides Benny with much more polished, vibrant, soulful, and in many cases triumphant instrumentals than what I've heard him on before.
I remember doing stick-ups for less than $100. Now we don't get dressed for less than 100,000.
And as far as I'm concerned, it works just as well, providing a great backdrop for Benny's storytelling and hard-hitting bars. It's very cinematic in its sound, with a lot of the lyrical content being focused on Benny's accomplishments in hip-hop, and how his work ethic and lessons learned from when he was selling drugs in the past apply to his success in hip-hop now. He's someone who sounds like he was just born to rap, with every word holding your attention, every rhyme and punchline sounding impressive.
I'm a Christian Dior shirt rocker, 2 Glock wearer, only rapper that would have thrived in the Tupac era.
Honestly, Benny is such a great rapper that he doesn't even need amazing beats to sound incredible, but the fact that this album is stacked front to back with brilliant instrumentals just elevates it so much. much. Burden of Proof has such a big, grand sound to it, but Benny still maintains the vivid lyricism that made him so popular in the first place, never allowing the strength of the beats to overpower his strength as a rapper. Put simply, Benny and Hit Boy absolutely nailed it on this one, adding another outstanding release to the Griselda member catalogue.
We still will arrive. Terror don't let me alone as I soliloquize. Like the ill, with a license to kill. This is nigga with an attitude of Beverly Hills.
In 2020, Run the Jewels came back with a bunch of beats produced primarily by LP that just slap you right in the face, with rapping from LP and Killer Mike over it that hits equally as powerfully in terms of the vocals and the lyrics. It's ironic how nearly every track on this album is stylized in lowercase, considering how in-your-face and relentless its sound is.
Drag addict on Mac with the blackest fabric. I'm back, I'm magically racking it. That's when I'm ducking, rat-a-tat-tats, I'm running it.
You would expect it by now with the duo being 4 albums into their work together as Run the Jewels, but they flow together so effortlessly when they're rapping on a track with each other. Whether they're purely displaying their skill and chemistry, or covering societal issues that are even more apparent and relevant than ever nowadays. There's so much content packed into this album that I can't break it all down in one short segment of a video, but I'd highly recommend listening to Walking in the Snow and Just if you want to hear some of the most powerful messages that the album has to offer.
And you so numb, you watch the cops choke out a man like me. Until my voice goes from a shriek to whisper, I can't breathe.
Run the Jewels makes music that impresses you lyrically, while at the same time being perfect music you can blast through some headphones when you're working out. It's amazing in the sound and production aspect, it's amazing in the rapping aspect, and it's amazing in the content aspect. Killer Mike and LP are just phenomenal together. It was genuinely hard to pick my top 3 tracks from this album because it's so damn consistent with its quality in every aspect of the music. And it's still a top 3 that will probably change frequently with every few listens because pretty much every song on here has a case for why it could be considered the best one. Run the Jewels dropped off a great album with no filler here, and it potentially might be the best thing that they've ever done together.
It's what you all been waiting for, ain't it? This no pressure shit kinda got us reacquainted. I'm happy you could join.
This was one hell of a rebound. In 2019, Logic made it onto my worst albums list, and now just 1 year later has bounced right back, dropping my second favourite rap album of 2020. The fact that this was his retirement album as he wanted to focus on being a father to his newborn son just added such a punch to his words and made the subject matter feel much more inspired than a lot of Logic's post-Incredible True Story music. With him touching on fatherhood and finding true happiness by doing what you truly want in life on many songs.
All I ever gave a fuck about was my career, but all that shit out the window now that my son is here. Fuck.
To this day, the album's message of not crumbling under the pressure of doing what others want you to do, and instead being confident in deciding your own happiness even if you have to make sacrifices, is something I still think about a lot. As I've said before in another video, this album had a real impact on me. Logic's rapping was sharp once again, he sounded passionate, and he truly had something to say before his rap career ended. Considering the fact I made a 45-minute long track-by-track review of this project expressing how much it grew on me after my first listen, I don't think there's much else I need to say or reiterate about it in this video. If you want my full thoughts on every track on No Pressure, definitely check that video out. I spent a hell of a lot of time on it and it's one of my favourite videos I've ever made. If this truly is the end of Logic releasing rap albums, then he closed out on a pretty perfect note.
Cop pulled me over in my imported Porsche. He said this car must be 100K. I said you 40 short.
As I said, and as you can easily tell by this point, Griselda ran 2020 for me, and my god did Conway stand out like crazy. I love Benny and Westside Gunn, but from what I've heard, Conway the Machine is my favourite member out of the group. He is just an absolute monster on the microphone in terms of lyricism and just pure presence on a track. He commands your attention when he's rapping a verse and pretty much never misses with a verse. Conway doesn't know how to miss. With From King to a God, he came through with the darkest sounding release from the 3 Griselda projects I've included on here, with songs like Lemon, Juvenile Hell, and Frontline having a very menacing sound to them that's perfectly matched to Conway's commanding cadence.
I breeze through fence, I need new drip. The grip on me think I'm lacking this time. I'ma leave you clip, machine you. Bitch.
Spurs 3 was one of the hardest Griselda tracks I heard in 2020 period. We get a powerful display of emotion on Forever Dropping Tears, one of the biggest highlights on here. There's a couple triumphant bragging tracks with From King and Jesus Crisis. Hell, he even makes a song over a fast-paced trap instrumental with Anza, and while he does use a more commercial sounding flow on it, the quality of his writing and rhyme schemes does not decline much at all.
Then I pass the bitch all CP3s. We come big strap P-on, get back, I am beyond this rap, we gon' click like.
Throughout all these tracks, Conway's pen game stays at its highest level and tells you exactly who he is, even if this album is your first ever time hearing him. Conway drops a lot of bars about how incredible he is as a rapper, and if you haven't heard this project yet and decide to go check it out, you'll very quickly see that all those bars have absolutely been earned. He is a pure heavyweight when it comes to rapping, and if you're in the mood for some heavy-hitting, old-school style rap, it doesn't get much better than The Machine. This album had me locked into every verse and bar, and that is why From King to a God by Conway is my personal favourite rap album of 2020. Thank you for watching.
Look, every Cuban link is at least a kilo. Versus by The Machine and the beat from Primo.